2, 3, subtracting rational numbers. Down here, our scale, our standard says that we can subtract rational numbers. You can see that there as we talk about subtracting decimals and fractions. We've done a little bit of review with our flip books, the yellow flip book with decimals, the blue one with fractions and mixed numbers. Today we're going to bring in positive and negatives. Yes, when we did those flip books, it was just straight subtraction. Today now with the positive and negatives, we're going to bring back our integer rules where we have this huge phrase, don't subtract, add the opposite. Put a big old bubble cloud around it. The word opposite, that's the big thing we need to remember. But today while we're doing the notes, I'm going to say don't subtract. I want you to say add the opposite. Even though you're there watching it, do it with me. Don't subtract. Did you do it? I couldn't hear you. Hope you did. Anyways, you're going to get the chance to do it more as we go through the notes. Because, look, subtraction. It's a silly question that I always say in class. Is there any subtraction? Today there is going to be. So I'm just going to save time on the notes. I'm not going to ask that. But when we see subtraction, I'm going to say don't subtract. You say, maybe you said add the opposite. If not, here it is. Add the opposite of positive 1 and 3/10 is a negative 1 and 3/10. Now our hope, our goal, we cross our fingers. Are those both positive? Nope, that would be great. Add them together. Are they both negative? Nope, that would be great. And we could just add them together. Since they're not, which one has the larger absolute value? Which one's further from 0? And when we talk about money, which one has more? The positive 6/10 or the negative 1 and 3/10? Since there are more negatives, a negative 1 and 3/10, even though this sounds funny today, we are going to do it. Take the 1 and 3/10 minus the other number, other fraction, because we got to figure out how much more is 1 and 3/10. Now, we talked about this in our flip book. Because we're not able to take 3/10 minus 6/10, we have a couple of options. But what we're just going to do right here is I'm just going to have you take that 1 times the 10, add that to the top, so we now have 13/10 minus our 6/10. Common denominator, so subtract across the way. The answer is 7/10 and go back. Since we said there was more of the 1 and 3/10, what type of 1 and 3/10 was it? Since it was negative, we're going to have a negative answer because there were more negatives. You're going to walk away owing Mr. Wall's money. And owing Mr. Wall's money, tisk tisk, that is a bad thing. Hey, look, another example. Don't subtract, add the opposite. Cross our fingers. Are they both positive? Nope. Now are they both negative? Yes, they are. Sweet. Then let's add them. Hey, in order to add, we need to have a common denominator. So I'm going to take this times 2. 18 would work. Remember our life hack we've talked about before, where you can just take 3 times 8 and you can make that as a common denominator. I'm going to be a mathematician, as you are welcome to be as well, whether you're in school or out of school, wherever you're watching this video, and be efficient. Efficient meaning there's a lot less work when I just make that a 4/6. I don't have to simplify as much later on. Now, this is enough work for me. You can stop right here, but for notes purposes, I'm going to write them again so we can see them. Now, add the fractions. That's 4/6 plus 1/6 to give us 5/6. And then add those whole numbers. A negative 6 plus a negative 8. If you borrow $8 and borrow $6, you still owe Mr. Walls $14, and owing me is a negative thing. Can you simplify negative 14 and 5/6? Nope. So you are done. Box it on up. That's the work I need to see. Evaluate. Here's a very important thing. Look right here when it says write fractions in simplest form. That means just fractions. This first example here, are there fractions in it? No, don't make them fractions. These instructions are for this example over here. Whenever we have fractions, make sure your answer is in simplest form. If you don't have fractions, do a heel click. Say, yay, we don't have to worry about simplifying. Here we go. Don't subtract, add, and then immediately after that, what is the opposite of a negative 0.96? Make it a positive. Draw your attention to the numbers. Are they both positive? Nope. Are they both negative? Nope. That's a bummer. That would be nice because then we could just add them. Since they're not, which one has more? Which one's got the larger absolute value? The negative 3 7/500ths or the 0.96? Since the 3.75, the $3.75 is more, we're going to start with that guy. Put him on top. So if you want to be efficient, just write right below it and line up the decimals. And we're going to subtract those numbers. How much more is those negatives than the positives? Now we go to borrowing. 6 and a 1, make that a 2, so that can be a 16. Careful. You heard me say at the beginning of the school year, your math teacher has done math for a long time, but we can make mistakes. Lots of room for little mistakes there. So the answer is 2.792 and 79 hundredths. But again, go back. Remember, we said this 3.75 was the one that had more, which means since it's negative, you're still going to owe me money. You're still going to have a negative answer. And you're done. Any subtraction in example number 1 over here on the right? Don't subtract. Did you say it that time? I don't know. We'll say add, and then going always to the right. What's the opposite of a negative 1/3? Positive 1/3. Take a look at those fractions. Are they both positive now? Yes, they are. So let's add them. Hey, a common denominator too. Yes, that's awesome. 2/3. Can you simplify 2/3? No. You are done. Please note, in class I have said this before as well, do not just make this 2/3 magically appear. I know you can do it, but I need to see this original problem written down on your notes as well. Just below you can see you have some more examples. I got them up here on the top so I can see them and do the notes nicely. Don't subtract, add the opposite. Hope you said it with me. If not, here we go. Oh, yes, heel click. They're both negative. We don't have to worry about that borrowing thing. Yes, so just say thank you. You're welcome. And now we make a common denominator. Great. So that is 2/6. Again, that's enough work for me. You can add them together now, but for us to see it in notes, I'm going to rewrite it so we can see it on one line. Add them fractions. We get, because they're negative, adding them together, 7/6, and then adding, well, there's only one whole number, so bring it down, negative 3 7/6. IXL may accept that, and that's just appalling. Please make sure that you put that in the simplest form. Remind yourself that that denominator, 6, can go into 7 one time, so put a 1 over here so we remember that. Take the 6 away from the top, you're left with 1/6, and you're not going to put in a 3 there. Make sure you add one more to that 3. So we have now 4, and make that a negative because it's going to stay negative. You cannot simplify 1/6, so we're done. Example over here. Don't subtract, add the opposite. Are they both positive? Nope. That would be great, then we could add them. Are they both negative? Nope. That would be great, then we could add them. Bummer. Which one has more? The 4.5 or the negative 1 and 4, the negative 5 and 1/4. Which one's got the larger absolute value or further from 0? Since it's the negative, write that one first. And then we are going to cross our fingers as we subtract to find out how much more and hope we don't have to do any of that borrowing thing. Again, find a common denominator. Make it 2/4, and I'm going to write it all over again so we can see it all nicely on one line. Now, when we look at our fractions, we cannot take 1/4 minus 2/4. You have two options. One option is the borrowing that we talked about previously. Borrowing in fractions is different, so say different. If you were in class, and make sure the class said different, so you go ahead and say different. It's different because when we take the 5 and borrow from it, we take it down 1, but we are borrowing 1 whole. We're borrowing 4/4 because the denominator is 4. So we need to take 1/4 and add 4/4. All I do in class, I just show that I'm adding 4 to the top because when we take 4/4 plus 1/4, we get the answer 5/4. That's how the borrowing works. And then bring down that 4. And I'm just going to rewrite everything so we can see it nicely on one line. Now we're able to subtract those fractions. 5/4 minus 2/4 gives me 3/4. And then subtracting those whole numbers, 4 minus 4 gives us nothing. Before you box it on up, take a look. Remind yourself to go back up top. And because this was negative, the negatives were more. Our final answer is a negative 3/4. Now, you're welcome to put your pencil down if you'd like, because if you don't like borrowing, here's the other option. You don't need to do them both, but since we're not here in class, I'm showing this video, I want to show them both ways to you. Whichever way you like, you can use. Always remember that you can change these into improper fractions. Taking 5 times 4, that gives us 20. Add it to the top for 21/4. And then we will take this other whole number, the 4 times 4, to give us 16. Add it to the top. Gives us 18/4. Now when we subtract those guys, again, since we have that common denominator, that gives us our 3/4. Just like we got on the last one, just like we did with the borrowing. And we go back and we remind ourselves that this 5 1/4 was negative, so our answer is negative 3/4. Whichever method you like, use. All that matters is you get to this answer here of negative 3/4. Whichever method you use does not matter to me. We're talking about this again, you can see, because we want to be able to subtract fractions and decimals. That's what our rational numbers are. Here's some extra practice. We're going to do them with decimals. Is there any subtraction? It's a silly question. Today is all subtracting. Don't subtract. Add the opposite. Hey, they're both positive, so let's just add them together. We're going to write them. I'm going to be efficient. Right underneath each other. Remember, when we add or subtract, stack those decimals. They need to be right on top of each other. Add them on up. 4 plus 7 is 11. Carry the 1. Careful, in class this year in 2020, I made a mistake on this one once or twice. Add them up. Your answer is not 151. Bring that decimal straight down. Then remind yourself, because you added 2 negatives, you borrowed money and borrowed money, you owe Mr. Walls some money. Negative 15 1/10. Negative 15.1. If you see subtraction, don't subtract. Add the opposite. Ooh, these ones we called opposites or additive inverses, because a negative 20.5 plus a positive 20.5, they're the same number, just one's positive, one's negative. That gives us 0. One last decimal example down here again. Don't subtract, add, and then move to the right. Always go forward. The opposite of a negative 0.07 is a positive 7/100. Are they both positive now? Sweet. Then add them. We're going to line up those decimals, remember. So these decimals need to be lined up here. And once you have done that, and you've got the decimals lined up, then just add them up. 8, 4, 0. Bring the decimals straight down. And because they were positive, your answer is a positive 48/100, a positive 4.8. Find the distance between the 2 points on a number line. On your assignment, it says a number line. Follow your teacher's instructions. If they say to use a number line, please do so. Otherwise, to find the distance, we're just going to make sure our final answer is positive. It's always positive distance. We don't talk about traveling a negative 107 miles to Bismarck or negative 20 miles to Garrison. Or to Max, excuse me. What we're going to do is have a positive 1, and to help, usually what I suggest is you take the largest minus the smallest. So take the largest and subtract the smallest. On the number line, it's easy to see because as the numbers go to the right, they are greater, they are warmer. So when I say which one's the greater value, which one's largest, we're going to start with 1 3/4. Let me write that the right way, excuse me. Now subtract the other number. Careful, what type of 1 1/4 is it? I hope you said negative, because I know in class people would say negative, which is great. So make sure you have it written this way. This is very important. The largest minus the smallest, with 1 being negative. Hey, look, there is subtraction, and we've been saying don't subtract. Add, what's the opposite of a negative 1 1/4? A positive 1 1/4. Yes! Are they both positive fractions or positive mixed numbers? Heel click, they are. Add them up. Please just bear with me for one moment here. That is 4/4. I know we can do something with it, but just leave it as 4/4 for the moment. and then add the whole numbers. 1 plus 1 is 2. IXL may accept that. I will not. Please make sure that you now simplify that, because you are right. 4/4 is another whole, which gives us a total of 3. For distance, please put a label on it: feet, meters, inches, kilometers, whatever it might be. When there's something like this and it doesn't have it, put the label units. Again, we want to be able to subtract rational numbers. That's our goal here with decimals and fractions. As well as you can see 2 different numbers on a number line. Find the distance between 2 rational numbers down here. And it's the absolute value, because it's always, 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 always positive. Today, you can subtract rational numbers.